Dick drops the hammer. It looks like he's coming on him, Richard.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Bottom Dead Center Show here on the OSMT YouTube channel. Joined, as always, by my co-host, Matt Looker. Just Matt and I holding it down today for the first half of the show, but we couldn't be more excited. The first half of the show is going to be short, sweet, and to the point because we have our special guest coming up in the second half of the show, none other than Tim Hall of Hall Brothers Racing. And if you know anything about us guys here on the show, especially my backstory, that's pretty important, pivotal person to a lot of us on the show here, and it's just going to be a great time, man. We actually just got done recording with Tim because of his schedule. We're recording on Sunday, November 16th, so we were trying to make the most of Tim's time, that he had some free time today to talk to us, and we were very grateful for that. It is a long interview. It's going to be at least an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes probably, but I think it's one of the most sincere, heartfelt, what would you say, Matt? Like the human side, like just the real man on the street side of Tim really came out in that interview. I think he shared, some stories and stuff that I certainly didn't even know about and hadn't heard before. So I think people are going to really dig it. But welcome back, to the show, Matt. And that was a pretty awesome session recording there with Tim.
It sure was. A lot of us, even those of us that have been in the industry for years, there's a lot of full circle moments and tie-ins to different parts of the industry and outside the industry and other parts of motorsports. And, like Eric Stern with the internet, the start of the internet. And
this little thing called the internet.
Yeah. Just the way that monster trucks tie into that. I think everyone that listens is going to really appreciate what Tim Hall brings to not only the show here on OSMT, but just what the Hall brothers contributed and were part of with monster trucks back in the heyday. It was a really good deal.
Yeah, they're such widely known names in the sport, but maybe misunderstood or just misinformed or just underinformed. Many fans are, and they might only have a little bit of understanding of the Hall brothers just from seeing them at, Monster Jam arena shows over the last few years, and maybe aren't aware of the wider picture, the more, wide encompassing career those guys have had, and the, just the quality of operation they've built. So in any case, after we get through, a couple housekeeping items we want to touch on here during the first half of the show, we'll be off to the Tim Hall interview here in the second half of BDC for the round tire discussion. And I think you'll really, really enjoy that too. So Matt, the biggest topic of the week right now is the Monster Truck Hall of Fame, buddy. We saw the inductions happen. So we're recording, like I said, Sunday, November 16th. So the induction ceremony was actually last night in Butler, Indiana. Not Butler, Pennsylvania, as our good friend Jim Kramer keeps saying, because that's where Eric Tack's from. I saw him have to keep catching that recently in some of their posts. Pretty funny there. But in fact, Jim had a post that said, Butler, Pennsylvania is where my good buddy Eric Tack is from, and maybe some news happened one time or something along those lines. So that's pretty funny. But so the inductions were last night. As far as the actual people being inducted into the Hall of Fame, Mr. Excitement, Jim Kohler, Steve Dane of the Dane family, Awesome Kong, King Kong, that realm. And, the guy we were campaigning the hardest for this year on OSMT, Ron Bachman Lurch, rest his soul, the late hero of the Bigfoot operation that, of course we lost him a number of years ago, but he's well overdue finding his place in that Hall of Fame, in our opinion. So at OSMT, we tried to do our part and help campaign for Ronnie, and he's in the hall where he belongs right now. So, Matt, I'd love to get your kind of first impressions now that we kind of see what happened over at the Hall of Fame. Terry Woodcock brought out a really special truck that nobody was expecting. So kind of give me your thoughts and impressions off the top of your head on this year's Hall of Fame event.
Man, the unveiling of cool kind of out of the way trucks that not everyone knows about is just something that the Hall of Fame does really well. And how can you do it better than a really cool truck and something that people don't really know about than the Abominable Snowman I guess it did one show back in the day. And the owner, unfortunately, I guess passed away. I don't know as much about the story as a lot of people at the Hall of Fame do, but it just a show truck once again by the folks out there in California. Um, Terry Woodcock does an absolutely awesome job redoing these trucks. That's why he does a lot with Hollywood over the years, because his attention to detail and his just way of kind of bringing trucks back to where they should be, and sometimes in cases for the first time where they should be. They did such a great job with that truck. The pictures and videos I saw of it are absolutely gorgeous. Just a cool old school truck that has a little bit of history, not as much as a lot at the Hall of Fame, but just another cool kind of point in the sports history to put into the Hall of Fame next to the classic trucks like Equalizer and Goliath and them. But yeah, I mean, that truck being there, and then finally getting Lurch, Ron Bachman into the Hall of Fame, like you said, something we've campaigned on for a long time. Well overdue. Mr. Excitement had what I was told by people that were there, it was the first time that he kind of stumbled over his words because it meant so much to him being put into the Hall of Fame, and definitely deserved to be there. Also, Steve Dane, of course, another one that pivotal in monster trucks back in the day, definitely deserved it. So seemed like a great time. Unfortunately, I need to get out there some year. I have not made it yet. Unfortunately, some year I'm going to, and it seems like it's always just a great time to see cool old iron that's in museum quality condition now, and meet a lot of people, meet up with a lot of people that you've known from years past or just seen on TV when you were a kid. Yeah, it just looked like a great weekend once again for the International Monster Truck Hall of Fame.
Well, I'm not trying to plan my year out a year in advance, although as a busy person with a career and raising a couple kids, I kind of have to. But I'm going to call it right now. I'm going to do everything I can to round up a little posse and maybe head out that way next year. So I'll definitely keep you abreast of that. I'd love to have you meet up there. I think it'd be really cool if we did a bottom dead center recording session there, and actually had a revolving door of guests join us for, short periods of time and things like that if the hall would have us. So I know we're a rowdy bunch, but we'd bring a neat element to the show. I would have thought just with the fan response to the OSMT YouTube channel becoming public in January and February this year, that we might have been the biggest newsmaker in old school monster trucks this year. But Terry Woodcock, and rightfully so, has totally dominated that awards category if it existed, because his work with, the restored and sort of reimagined Bigfoot trucks, and, with this truck and other projects that he's working on. I didn't even know Abominable Snowman was really a thing. And maybe I'd heard of it one time, but just to see the quality of that truck and the preservation, and just, it's a gorgeous machine. And so two of our OSMT crew were at the Hall of Fame. Two of our anarchivists, Chris Mormanis and Matt Stoltz, were there. Matt had been battling some health issues fairly recently, and it's not my business to go into detail into his business. But what I will say is we are absolutely, totally thrilled that Matt was able to get well enough and get over to the Hall of Fame. And it sounds like he had a great weekend over there. So still a bit of a road ahead of him, but we're cheering and rooting him on to get well quick. And then like I said, shout out to Chris for the Thunder Chicken Koozie. Having those guys out there, they sent a lot of the pictures that you saw on our Instagram that you're seeing on this episode. But Jim Kramer called me the other day before this was maybe 2 weeks ago or whatever, and was kind of asking me, he's like, man, he's like, do you have any data that maybe you could determine for me, like how many gigs did Ron Bachman do with Bigfoot? And I don't have that much of the schedule history data that I could actually put a realistic number on that. But when you think about, I mean, the list in Excel is taller than Ron was in real life, easily. It's got to be well over 1,500 gigs. I mean, he was a crew guy for so long. I think he started there in 83 or 84. 84 sticks in my mind for some reason. but then starts driving by the end of the 80s and is driving it. I mean, he did those marathon tours like over in the UK and stuff like that. I mean, my guy took Bigfoot to Iceland. He took Bigfoot to Japan. I mean, multiple times to Japan, actually. Not only did he compete in the Tokyo Dome in Bigfoot 3, but he also took Bigfoot 1 on behalf of Bridgestone Firestone to Mount Fuji in the snow, of all places. And, I did a little write-up on OSMT a while ago about Lurch, and just imagine the faces on these Japanese businessmen as this giant monstrosity that they have a distant sponsorship relationship with comes, I picture it driving out from behind a building or a trailer or something somewhat hidden. And they're already thinking, holy shit, that is a big truck. That is the most American thing ever, is this giant monster truck. And then in one step, probably not using the flip down cheater step or anything, this nearly 7 foot tall Sasquatch Godzilla of a man steps down in one easy stroke out of that truck. And they're like, oh my God, like, that's America. Like,
Yeah. Where's
which
the apple pie and the bald eagle?
Oh, as the eagle, cries overhead, and Lurch polishes off a 24 pack of American light beer and an apple pie, but just larger than life in everybody's hearts and in all the good ways. And another thing that I brought up, and I can't remember if I mentioned it in season 1 of BDC or not, but at some point, and it would have been in the early 90s when he did a lot of that, that window of time, he did so much international touring. At some moment in time, there was a kid in Paxton, Illinois, and there was a kid in New Orleans, Louisiana, and there was a kid in Sheffield, England, and a kid in Reykjavik, Iceland, and a kid in Tokyo, Japan. And they all had a Bigfoot picture hanging on their wall with Ron Bachman's autograph on it.
Yes.
That's pretty goddamn cool. I mean, that is untouchably cool in my book right there. So when we say on this show, and I've called him this for years, and other people have as well, but I'm just saying, I've referred to Ron as an ambassador of the monster truck industry because of how far outside the normal borders of this business he reached, out and took Bigfoot and monster trucks in general to people. He truly was an ambassador. He was going international. Like, he's bad. He's nationwide. He's also global. Prestige worldwide, courtesy of Ron Bachman. So, but anyhow, so that kind of wraps up on the Hall of Fame talk
actually,
there. Sorry, go ahead.
I do have to mention one thing. Barely a special acknowledgement as much as maybe stole the show for some people. If you ever met this guy, you know how funny and cool this is. There is now a wax statue of circa late 80s Alan Tura to go with the Goliath truck, with the mustache.
I forgot about that.
With the mullet. I had to mention that as you're talking. I'm like, oh man, I forgot to mention the wax Alan Tura statue that he brought.
Jamming to the band Lazarus, if you've ever read the bedsides on the truck or the tank. Rock out to the band Lazarus. What was the genesis behind that? Like, who went to Madame Tussauds and got spare material to make a 1-to-1 green light replica of Alan Tura? So,
I mean, Alan builds these like fun houses. That's what he does for a living, right? He puts them all over the world. That's one of the things that he does. And I want to say it was just him doing it. Like I think he actually built the thing. I don't know for sure.
This is all on brand for Alan Tura. If you know him, this is so on brand.
If you know the guy, when you hear that there's a wax statue of Alan adorning the Goliath truck now, it's very on brand. I believe he was the driving force behind this.
It makes you want to walk up, just eyeball it, and be like, really, Alan? Really, Alan? That's a lot of wax, Alan. You know what we mean. All right.
Oh, my God. All right.
Yep. You know I'm not wrong, though. Like, I'm not wrong. I remember walking around. It's not in Vegas anymore, but I remember walking around because he had his robots at the show we were going to be doing at the Orleans Arena and Casino. And Alan had the robot or something there. And I remember him and myself and Travis Howard, shout out Triple T. We were cruising the Imperial Casino Car Museum, or the Imperial Car Museum, whatever it's called. Walking around checking this stuff out. Alan, guys, there's some girls I'm supposed to meet, guys. Are we going to keep looking? Guys. And then he'd answer the phone. This is Alan. And I just, it's so funny because I remember this guy's truck being a fixture in my childhood. And then you're just getting to see him doing his regular thing, whatever that might be. And it just makes me laugh now, all these years later, just how unique. I mean, as unique as the monster trucks were in the 80s, that's how unique their owner drivers were too, man. Like, and Alan he's a great example of that, to be sure. So
absolutely.
But yeah, that's Hall of Fame talk right there. Credit to everybody behind that organization for what they're doing out there. And, we may have differences in opinions with certain things, but I think we can all agree that what they're doing is worthwhile and important, and we're glad they're doing it. And definitely hope, that'd be pretty cool if in a year's time we're out there, meeting and hanging out, Looker, and interviewing some people. So moving right along. So if you follow us on our Instagram page, which you absolutely should, I know of at least one person in my circle of friends who signed up for Instagram strictly to view the content we put on Instagram. We have our Battle of the Coolest Monster Trucks battle bracket running right now there on Instagram. And I feel like I need to reiterate one more time how this works. So there's basically 8 of us that make up what I call sort of the core OSMT group. Of course, it's Matt Looker and myself, Cody Saucier, Matt Iceman Eisen, Frank Krimmel, and then our research team, our Anna archivist, Justin Mosinger, Matt Stoltz, and Chris Mormanis. So that's 8. That's an even number. So we knew if we were going to do any kind of a bracket type thing where we voted, we would need a tiebreaker. But we really wanted this bracket to sort of reflect our team's opinions on stuff. There's a ton of brackets across all kinds of stuff right now running for some reason. And BIGFOOT did it really early on. So credit to them with their livery bracket and all that kind of stuff. But we actually did not want ours to be a 100% fan vote thing. We were looking for ours to sort of be our team hashing it out, battling it out with each other, and then letting the fans basically contribute the tiebreaker vote. So we went through this whole process of coming up with what we thought our 64 coolest monster trucks ever were to fill the bracket. So we know the fans didn't pick it, and they would have picked things different, and that's fine. But this is our deal. So we build the bracket out, 64 trucks, and then we put them into 4 different buckets, and then we randomly seeded by pairing bucket 1 and bucket 3, bucket 2 and bucket 4. And it was just kind of the best way we could figure it out. Otherwise, we'd be like doping the brackets and intentionally having one Bigfoot truck that we think is going to go far here and a Gravedigger truck we think is going to go far here, and et cetera, et cetera. So there was some painful eliminations in the first couple rounds of this, and it's frankly not getting any easier. And the fan vote has been solving some tiebreaker scenarios as the 9th vote. So when you vote on the Instagram page, what you're doing is you're determining, is the fan vote going to count for this truck or this truck? So even if the fans are able to amass, a ton of steam behind, let's say, BIGFOOT 4 1990 Louisville edition, and that truck won the fan vote, right? But it didn't break a tiebreaker between us because only myself and one other person on our little committee had actually voted for BIGFOOT 4. Everybody else had voted for Gravedigger. But there's other situations like with Michigan Ice Monster and whatever, I can't remember what truck it was paired against a round or two ago. The fans totally, changed the tie to that with the tiebreaker. So it's just something fun to do. It doesn't cost anything to vote. And if you don't like it, I'll refund your membership fees like I always joke about. But just kind of something fun to do that we wanted to reflect our personality. So as by the time you're watching this, we'll probably have already been through the Elite 8. At the time of recording, we've just finished publishing the final round of 16 heats. So it's coming down to the wire. And then the plan is we still have one more episode of Bottom Dead Center that we're going to record, here towards the end of November. That should come out on Friday, December 5th, right around there. And that should line up with our scheduled posting for this bracket to where we can announce the winner on that episode of Bottom Dead Center. But don't worry, throughout the month of December, we're still going to go back and acknowledge what trucks won the fan vote in each round, because we kind of want the fans to see, where some of their votes landed and what was same or what was different. And we're not going to go through what everybody on the OSMT committee voted for, because we want to move on to other things. But still, we've had a lot of fun with this. Matt, I can definitely see us doing bracket things like this in the future periodically. Probably not 64 of anything, but I definitely think like a 16 competitor, what was the best monster truck VHS home video would be a pretty badass bracket.
That is a great idea. Absolutely, the VHS. We've had other ideas thrown around, but I like that one too.
Well, if 15 other people would get on the stick, we could have the 16 coolest wax monster truck driver statues and determine who was the coolest out of those. All right, I digress.
Cup.
Yes, yeah. Madman Tussauds is what it should be. So yeah, we have that going, and then Justin Mosinger, kind of the spearhead behind the Bigfoot History Archive, which is starting to collect more and more data of shows that didn't feature Bigfoot or other trucks besides Bigfoot. So holy cow, are we building that out right now? He had this wonderful idea that once we hit 50 days remaining in 2025, with this, nearing the end of Bigfoot's 50th anniversary, it'd be really cool day by day to, highlight each year of Bigfoot's 50 years, kind of with an eye towards the future as we get to the end. So, we've already done, 75, 76, 77, 78. Today, like I said, Sunday, the 16th, we've got 79 posting. And so we're just touching on a couple key things with each year. Certainly as the 80s and the 90s roll on, you could probably do 10 or 15 pictures from a year, but we're just trying to distill it down to some cool things and highlight some neat photos or neat tidbits of information that we've, collected over that time. So I'm trying to put a really fun graphic design spin on those as time permits. And just really make it more of like a cultural appreciation thing for all this stuff that we're into, because, it's the nuts and bolts of this stuff is fun. A lot of these pictures maybe people have seen before, but just trying to frame them in sort of a new light. I don't know if you've gotten to see any of those, Matt, but we're definitely having some fun with it on my side of things.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a cool little thing you're doing with that. I love seeing it. It's a cool little addition to OSMT.
Well, if anybody can ever get us the complete, or at least reasonably complete schedules of other marquee truck names, Gravedigger, we would be happy to honor, team names and histories and liveries like that all the same. Before we wrap up this first half of the show, because we really want to get you on to the Tim Hall interview here in the second half, just kind of want to preview a couple things that we have lined up ahead. We're tentatively planning, depending on his schedule, to have Jim Kramer on the show in December. His episode, again, depending on his schedule. He's a hero of all of ours, but he's a friend to all of us, and he has a life. And certainly around the holidays, he's got a lot going on. So, we'll see how his schedule shakes out, but we'd like to break it out into a 2-part episode, probably to, give the story some time to breathe and stuff, depending on the time he has. And then coming up after the first of the year, we're looking forward to having Mitch Drops and Mike Rex on with the, former owner of the T-Rex monster truck. And boy, have they got some stories to tell. And Mitch hits me up once in a while with a cool picture, some info about stuff. And I just think that is, excuse me, I think that's just a truck that's not particularly well known in the wider fan circles. And I almost guarantee you there's some really neat, enlightening and funny stories behind that operation and what that guy did in the 90s with that truck. I think it was the old Barely Tame truck, if I'm not mistaken. So that'll be really cool. And, some other special guests. We've got another Needle and Groove episode, sub episode, let's call it, with Iceman coming up soon as well. So, for a bunch of guys that aren't getting paid to do this stuff and have no clue what they're doing, Matt, we're hanging in there. And I think we're delivering some pretty cool content as we start to wrap up our first full year of OSMT being this public thing that it is now.
Yeah, man, it's been a good ride. I know we talked about it for a while, and finally, well, mostly you jumped in with all the technical stuff, and just been doing it now I can't believe it's been almost a year. That's wild.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we were rolling stuff out right after Christmas break, I think, the start of the year. That was my doofus of a pit bull, by the way, barking at one of my children. It's like, no, it's not an intruder breaking into the house. It's the snack consuming team that I've raised in this house coming to, no doubt, pillage the pantry. But anyhow, we want you to take a break with us here. Go pillage your pantry, pillage your beer cooler, fridge, whatever you got to do. Settle in. We have a really cool interview, like I said, coming up with Tim Hall here on the second half of the show. So, yeah, and we'll just try to avoid any additional or future tech issues on this episode. We'll just see how it goes. Bear with us, but I feel like that's becoming our calling card. Matt is just some kind of comical, overblown tech issue every episode. But yeah, take a quick break with us. Oh, you know what? I had one more thing I wanted to mention, Matt. We talked about this offline before we got started. So I want to share a really awesome, and this is going to sound like an ad read, and I'm sorry, but I had a really amazing customer service experience recently with a motorsports rooted company that I really want to share with you guys. So way back in whatever it was, May or June, needed some new shades. I'm like a lot of y'all out there. I go through shades, pretty aggressively. They get broke when I'm working on my Bronco, in the, outside the garage, or I drop one and it gets smashed between some kegs at work or whatever is going on. So I kind of got away from buying like nice Oakleys and stuff like that. Cause I'm hard on stuff. I never know when I'm going to see my 8-year-old go running past with a pair of my shades on just for fun. And God knows what's going to happen to him then. So I was trying to find affordable shades that actually looked good and aligned somehow with my interests or my values. And I found this company out of South Carolina called Driven Sunglasses. Josh Berry with the Wood Brothers is actually kind of how I found out about him because of his endorsements with them. So I jumped online, found super reasonable prices, good looking frames, ordered a couple pairs for myself. And then I saw that they did the really cool Wood Brothers 75th anniversary shades. So ordered a pair of those. Got them, was loving wearing them all summer long. Unfortunately, had a little accident where my wife didn't see they had fallen onto the passenger seat of my pickup truck, and she sat on them. And my wife's not a great big lady or anything like that. They're sunglasses, right? Like they're built to sit on your face, not get sat on. So choice of words always. Hold it together, Matt. Focus. So we hollered at them and told them what happened. And lo and behold, like a week later, they had found a way to help us make it right with a little care package in the mail and got us took care of and got me back on the road with my Wood Brothers shades fully intact. So I super appreciated that, and reached out to them and let them know how much I thought of their customer service. So I would encourage you to, give them a follow on social media, Driven Sunglasses, an American owned business. They're in South Carolina, not too far from Darlington Raceway, if I'm not mistaken. Huge involvement in motorsports. I mean, Josh Berry and Ron Capps on the drag racing side, just really cool endorsements. I think Shane Van Gisbergen with Trackhouse might be one of their drivers that they back. So, give them a look over there. Affordable stuff. I'm sure they'll have some cool sales running for the holidays. But Driven Sunglasses. And if it wasn't so dark here in the OSMT dungeon, I'd model some sunglasses I wear for you. But my name and modeling have nothing in common, so we'll spare you of that. We're going to head to break here real quick. We'll come right back after we get through these commercial messages for the OSMT Mart. We got some new stuff up on there. And there's going to be a variety of different, holiday sales running on there. Those are programmed by the service we use, the print-on-demand service. But go to osmt.myspreadshop.com. Check out along the top of the site. You'll always see like use code blah, blah, blah for 25% off, stuff like that. And I'll try and do a better job on the Instagram page of keeping you alert on that stuff. So, we'll head to break. We got Hall of Fame in the basket. Talked about our battle bracket on Instagram, talk about the OSMT Mart. We're checking boxes here, but we're coming back to talk to one of the kings of horsepower in the monster truck industry, the one and only Tim Hall. So we'll see you guys here in a bit for the second half of our show, the round tire discussion, our interview with Tim Hall.
last year, Ram killed the Hemi V8, and people had opinions. The same people that killed the Hemi sent me out here with these comments. That's not happening. We own it, we got it wrong, and we're fixing it. You hear that? That's our Hemi, and it's saying, I'm back.
Did he say what I think he said? That thing's got a Hemi!
Hell yeah, it does. You want more? Buckle up. Ram's coming back to NASCAR. Let's go. We're back in America's motorsport. The Hemi's back, and we ain't going anywhere.
All right, hey, welcome back to the second half of Bottom Dead Center here, and we have our special guest joining us now, and we couldn't be any more honored and any more happy to have the one and only Tim Hall of Hall Brothers Racing joining us today. And I'll reach for my lovely crowd applause cheering button that I've been thoughtfully provided with from the kind folks at Zencaster. What are you up to today, Tim? Thanks for joining us.
Sure. Just kind of getting back into into things here. I was out, had a bit of a health issue there for a week. I was gone. I had problem with retaining some fluid, so I got past that and back at it now, and get back out to the shop and get things going. Went over to the Hall of Fame Friday night and enjoyed that. Got to see a lot of folks, and see people that don't get to see all the time or haven't seen in a while, and that was enjoyable. And now it's back to building a couple motors. Getting we had a time there when the focus was switching away from the Hemi engine, so we kind of let our supply of engine parts and whatnot kind of run down, with the idea that we were going to be switching to an all-new engine format. But a couple of changes here and there, the biggest being a change in the Stellantis CEO, and once Stellantis, that owns the Ram truck brand, kind of changed their direction, brought back a fellow named Tim Kaniskis, who was kind of the father, as it would be, of the Hellcat and all of those related projects there, and the TRX Ram truck. And he had retired and left the company. When he came back, the new CEO came in. All of a sudden, it was Hemi is back. So no longer focused so much on the Hurricane project. We were going to do a turbocharged racing 6-cylinder, and we're still going to do that Hurricane project. We're going to put one in the ride truck and kind of mess around with a crate version of that engine. But racing, it's back to Hemi. So we had to get caught back up on parts, and now we got to get caught back up on inventory and build some Hemis again. And so that's what we've been doing, trying to get focused on freshening stuff up and get ready for the next year. Things are going to be different for us next winter and in the first quarter of 2026. We're going to shift gears a little bit. Ram is returning to the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, which that's a big deal for us. Not that we race Craftsman trucks, right, but it's a big deal from an activation point of view. We're going to be doing a lot of as many as 14 NASCAR weekends next year, where we're going to have activations. So we'll have, that could be, it could be the ride truck there, it could be a car crush there, it could be just static displays. Just depends on facility by facility, and then also what what NASCAR allows at specific venues. Maybe a venue is a Toyota venue, or it's a Ford venue, or Chevrolet venue, whatever. So we have to play by the rules, but that's going to be interesting. For the first time in a little while, we aren't going to be doing a Monster Jam tour
Oh, wow.
for the first quarter. We've been doing that for the last several years, but in our career, in Mark and I's career, that's come and gone. As
Right.
you know, Kyle, we've
Yep.
done some, then left for a while, then come back, then left for a while. All those Monster Nationals years, those were great years when we worked with George Eisenhart, and then when special events took those events over, and we continued doing them for them. So we're gonna do some different events. They're Monster Jam's doing that, filming that movie, and doing some other things that it doesn't lend our. Obviously, a lot of independent teams run their bodies and stuff like that. We obviously can't do that. There's licensing things that go along with all of that perhaps we can't do some of those things. So we're still doing some Monster Jam events here and there. We're just not on a tour. So
Gotcha.
we'll be doing some of that, some Monsters of Destruction, probably some Monster Truck Insanity events, and then also, these NASCAR events. I think we're going to do a few more kind of like display type, maybe, I don't know, I guess you could call them trade shows, RV shows, some regional farm shows. We always do a handful of the national farm shows, the what I call the three big ones, the World Ag Expo in Tulare, the Husker Harvest Days in Grand Island, Nebraska, and Farm Progress Show, which rotates between Illinois and Iowa. So, we do all of those kind of things. And another thing that's new for us in the last year or so is Rams' involvement with college football. Never really thought we would be doing college football games, but hey, a lot of them college football games, especially in the South, are massive. They have massive crowds, and the tailgating and all that goes with them, the fan zones and all of those things are big. And so we do that. We've got last year we got to go to the Super Bowl. We did some league championships. We did a Big Ten championship. We did the college football playoff championship, which expands this year, and I think we're going to do that. So those are all different, and we're in TV commercials now. So that was kind of cool, get to do that. We've been almost 40 years in the business, and we never got a chance to do a TV commercial. And so that was neat. Now that we've actually shot a few of them, some that have aired and some that haven't yet. So that's kind of cool, and how all that works behind the scene, and the experience of it all. That's pretty cool. So looking forward to doing some more of those with not only Ram, but with another partner of Ram's that's going to be in on these college football stuff. So. College football games, so that'll be cool. And who knows where the future exactly goes, but we're doing a new 3-year deal with Ram right now. So for the 26, 7, and 8 seasons. So so that'll be good. And that puts us. We started with them in 2002. So that puts us out there with the STP Petty and the Bernstein Budweiser deals, and it's a long lasting partnership. So we're fortunate.
That's a great point you bring up there. We actually discussed Hall Brothers Racing as having one of the longest lasting deals, and not just in monster trucks, but in motorsports in general. On a past episode, we were kind of getting into the business side of things, and you really have to look outside monster trucks for some of those long tenured sponsorship relationships, like you talked about with like STP and the Petty name. And I tend to think of things like Pennzoil or Molson Coors with Roger Penske. Those are really long lasting deals that have evolved through different let's say, sub brands, within those corporations or Detroit Diesel, things like that. And what you guys have done, certainly for the monster truck industry, I would have to say Firestone and Bigfoot are about the only other thing that's comparable. And certainly in terms of like an OEM manufacturer being involved, you guys have, I was able to join your team from 2003 to 2007, and that was a big deal because it was so new for you guys then. And I frankly can't, fathom how fast time has flown by in some respects, and that you guys are still doing all this great stuff with them. I was out at the NASCAR event in March at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, and I was already hearing rumblings in the Cup Garage, with the Colleague potential switch over to, adopting the Ram program and vice versa and stuff like that. And then when we saw the teaser photo of the transporters pulling into Darlington, I worked with you long enough and was in the business long enough. I was like, all right, monster trucks don't roll into Darlington very often because we know, unfortunately,
No.
Pro MT is not a thing anymore. So we knew you were cooking something up, and we called it pretty early that it had to have something to do with, Craftsman truck type activation. So what I gather then from everything you just told us is you're not busy at all right now. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, we're pretty fortunate that we have, so many other aisles to go down, as it would be, compared to the more conventional, take your monster truck to the races and race and go home. We get to go to a lot of other types of events, and we get to kind of bring the sport to a lot of people. As popular and as as popular as the sport is, it still blows my mind how many people haven't seen it. They've heard about it or whatever, but you're talking to somebody at a Ram dealership or at a farm show or at a NASCAR vendor. Well, what do you do with these things? Well, you race them, and then the first thing their mind goes to, you're on the track, with 30 other guys or something, at a local short track or something on a Friday night. They don't, or that maybe that we race kind of as a class as it would be of off-road racing trucks or something, that we're going to race like the Core Series or something, back in years past. And once you explain, no, it's more like drag racing, but we race one other guy, and you explain the connections and how our engines and stuff are more drag racing similar than they are off-road racing similar or NASCAR similar. And the old adage that we're part farm equipment, part desert racer, and part drag racer, kind of lends itself to explain what we do. But nevertheless, we kind of take it out there to explain to people what it is we do and what the sport is. And the next time there's a monster truck event at your local arena, go by and see it, because this is what we do. And so hopefully we're spreading the word. But
I think what you and Mark's operation have been so good at over the last, 2.5 decades, basically now, is, and obviously, other teams do it as well. I was a part of it at Foot with Firestone stuff, and they did it with Ford dealers before that. But, we're bringing monster trucks to the people, right? So when a promoter, like when Matt's doing a throwdown event with Elliott Miller, they're trying to get people to come to what they've built for the weekend, right? Where I think what you guys have excelled at, because it's a different component of the industry, is you're taking the show to the people a little more so. Yes, we need to get them out to the dealership or the tire store, but I think that's so critical because people have so many distractions that want a piece of their time now, right? We have these things in front of our face all the time, and these things and TVs, and there's, a gazillion different kinds of activations out there. I go to my local Kroger store here, and all I see is the virtual shoppers out there getting groceries for people, right? So we can't even get people. Yep. We can't even get people off their ass to the grocery store to shop the good sales. So how do we get them to the Ram dealer, right?
Yep.
How do we get them to buy into what you guys are doing? And you're obviously, you guys in Ram are looking at people that are towing, that are hauling, that are working, that are family people. I drive a quad cab pickup truck because I got to have room for my family, but I still got to tow. I still got to haul some stuff. So you're taking the message to them rather than hoping they come to, a monster truck event and happen to engage with the brand there. And I think that's part of what's made your guys' dealership experience just so impactful over these last couple decades.
Well, you're right, and there are a couple of things to expand on that just a little bit that have become important. I think. Let's be honest. Going to the event, sometimes it, quite frankly, especially in today's economy, is out of reach of some fans. They just can't afford to go to the arena and buy a handful of tickets that they need, and pay to park the car and everything they need. And so maybe when we're at that Ram dealer down on the corner, and the little guy gets to come out and see the monster truck that maybe mom and dad couldn't afford to go to the race, but we can still get a chance to see the truck and kind of build that fandom to where someday that situation will change and they'll be able to go, and so I think that's important. And the other thing is, when you consider the length of time that we've had this program going, a lot of those little kids that came holding on to mom or dad's hand to watch us crush cars or something at a dealership, now they got little kids of their own, and they still got that Hemi Ram poster hanging up on the wall, that Mark signed or you signed or Matt or Jeremy or Dale or any of the guys over the years that have driven. Curtis is driving for us now. All the guys that have driven for us, all those posters a lot of them are still out there. A lot of them are hanging on walls. And
I don't want to interrupt, but to your point, I just saw on eBay a Raminator Hero card from 2007 where it was you, Mark, Jeremy, myself, Dale, and Travis on the back of the card, and Trav and I had signed the Hero card. So I'm digging in the files like, where the hell did Travis and I go do a car crash in 2007? And they're like, who, not sure who the autographs are. And I'm like, you don't need to know. It might take the value down. Just keep selling that sucker for 25.
No, but in the pickup truck segment, what they call conquest sales. I've learned so much of this stuff that I had no idea when we got into this. We were just, Tim and Mark monster truck guys. We weren't marketing guys. We didn't understand all these things and terms and all this. But these conquest sales are so important. Let's say Grandpa had an F-150 and Dad had an F-150, and so this guy's going to go buy an F-150, because that's what his family always had. Trying to get that guy to get behind the wheel of a Ram and say, well, just give it a chance, drive it and see what you think. And today's Ram 1500 to 2500, 30, whatever, is a far cry from an old W250, power wagon from 86 or something, and so get in and see the difference and see how they've evolved, and try to get those conquest sales. And that's very important, to get people to at least get them behind the wheel. The truck will sell itself if you just get in there and get them in there. So that's part of the appeal, to get them to the dealership, get them down there and, let them try it, and let some of these kids that maybe remember, hey, I had a good time over at XYZ Motors when 20 years ago when Dad took me to see the car crush, and now I go back to that dealership and I get all my cars there, and now my kids are buying their cars there, and it kind of takes off. So that's an important fact that's not lost at Ram as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I want to talk, while we do have you for a little while today, I do want to talk more about, the corporate side of the sponsorship game that the Hall Brothers team has been a part of for so long. But I really want to get into a little bit of the nuts and bolts just of how you and Mark came to be a part of motorsports in general, because obviously when you brought me on board as a very impressionable, very green 18-year-old, my motorsports enthusiasm and experience was mainly limited strictly to monster trucks. And you guys exposed me to things like IndyCar racing and NASCAR and NHRA in ways that I'd never been exposed to them, but also motorcycle racing, which I can't claim to be a huge fan of, but you opened my eyes to something I didn't even understand, which was flat track motorcycle racing. And a lot of that, comes through your guys' dad. So tell us real quick, kind of in a nutshell, how your dad got involved in motorsports, kind of what his role was, and then how that sort of trickled down to you and Mark.
Yeah, absolutely. he started in 1958 announcing some motorcycle races, and it kind of went like this. He hung out with a guy. We lived near a little town called Thomasboro, Illinois, and there was a fellow there. Festus Arnold was his name, and Festus was a motorcycle racer, and so Dad and my Uncle Ben, they kind of, as kids do, gravitate to the local race, the guy that's racing, and hang out in the garage and help him with in this case, it was race motorcycles, but and then they get to go to a race, or something. So anyway, so they're at the races, and they need an announcer at the motorcycle races, and the conversation kind of went, well, Jack, you got a big mouth, get up there and announce. So he started announcing, and it took off, and he was actually pretty good at it, and trained a guy named Dave Despain, that you guys have all heard about. And trading some other guys along the way. And, he was kind of, did a lot of AMA racing, AMA motorcycle racing. One of the most famous ones, if you look at the pictures of Kenny Roberts and the TZ 750 motorcycle that he ran at Indianapolis, the 4-cylinder 2-stroke that he ran and won the race with, and said later that the motorcycle should be disqualified, and you should never allow it. It's just too dangerous. Well, the old man was the guy interviewing him, so he's in all of those pictures. But nevertheless, Dad did a lot of motorcycle racing announcing, and so the rest of us, Mark and my brother John, we kind of grew up going to the races. Grew up going to the motorcycle races, and then when it wasn't motorcycles, it was World Outlaws or tractor pulls or the local stock car track. One of my first jobs was running the water truck during the week, and at the local, we had a local racetrack here that sadly is gone now, but learning how to prepare the half mile for the weekly race series, and then I sold the Speed Sport News on the weekend at the races, for I think it was like 50 cents a copy, and I got 15 cents or something, made enough to go buy some hot dogs and watch the races, and that was I thought that was cool. But grew up the racetrack. Mom didn't really want us racing motorcycles, said it was too dangerous. So we had to find something else to race because we wanted to race something. So it was 4-wheel drive trucks that we got into, and started racing mud races, where you drive to the race, and drive home. So you hope you didn't tear up your truck because you had to drive it home. There wasn't no haulers. And, that was it. But, started with motorcycle racing, and Dad announced so many races during the summer that it wasn't uncommon to leave one fairgrounds, drive through the night, sleep on a picnic table at the fairgrounds for tomorrow's race, and, race there, and then go to the next one, and back Monday morning for his regular job as a sheet metal worker, so, we did a lot of weekend racing and weekend race trips, and that's where I knew I wanted to race something. I hated working. When I got out of college, I had a job at a factory that built fertilizer trucks, and I hated that 9-to-5 lifestyle. I wanted to go to the races, and that's what I wanted to be able to come home from the race and go to another race. I didn't want to have to go back to work, so I had to figure something out.
I had none of this context when you hired me out of high school in 2003, but boy, I appreciate that, because man, last thing I wanted to do was sit in another classroom. I was ready to get on the road with, no holds barred, and you guys have allowed so many young people to do that too, and we'll get to that here in a minute. But am I remembering wrong, or is there a photo that you had in the office of your dad? And I want to say he was sitting at an announcer's table, maybe, but it was in the Silverdome.
That's
for
right.
A flat track race. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, it was for a tractor pull, but you're right. That was one of the very first tractor pulls in the Silverdome, and tractor pull and truck pull, and which morphed into the U.S. Hot Rod Truck Pulling Association, which chained into U.S. Hot Rod, and then the rest.
Monster Jam.
Yeah. So,
eventually.
That's that. He was back there in them early days, and it was kind of neat to be part of that. Even I was old enough to understand what was going on, and enjoy it, and remember a lot of it. So that was really cool. So it was neat. It was a very formative part of what became my career.
What a fortunate place for you and Mark to grow up, geographically. So much grassroots motorsports happened and thankfully still continues to happen to some extent. Obviously, we're losing racetracks, it seems like every year at an alarming rate, whether they're drag strips or circle tracks or whatever. But like to your point, I mean, there's so many county fairs out there, Tim. I mean, in Wyoming, our counties are massive. There's only like 20
Yeah,
some odd
right.
counties in this whole state. We're the 10th largest state in the United States. We only have 600,000 people in the whole state. Our counties are the size of states. I look at Illinois and all the little county fairs that I gigged at with you guys, whether it was ride truck or car crash, whatever, there's just county fairs everywhere, and there's tractor pulling and truck pulling. It seems like at every county fair, and there's a circle track. Bob Sargent owns a circle track over here, and there's one up the road in this little town. And I mean, I couldn't appreciate that as much when I was young like that, where now I would kill to have that much, activity around us here where there's virtually none. So, I mean, super fortunate place for you guys to just kind of grow up in the middle of all that. I obviously never got to meet your father. I believe he had passed away around 1999.
That's
and
right.
I came to you guys in 2003, but obviously the man had a massive work ethic. And that, that was extrapolated, across you and Mark's work ethics. And I saw that certainly at a really young age. But how did you guys apply some of what he gave you to make your way through the monster truck industry? And we don't have to get in the nuts and bolts of heavy metal and Big Boss and all that, because I know you've covered that on a lot of other shows, but I care more about the human aspect of this. How did that, let's phrase it this way. So you guys had a love and a thirst for motorsports, but then you had your dad's, intensity and professionalism and work ethic. How did you guys use all of that as motivation to carry on with your own motorsports career, but also armor yourself against the hard times of, being tight on money or not a lot of opportunity? How did you guys use that?
Well, that's a good question. You're right. In the Midwest, we were blessed with a lot of racetracks that sadly a lot of them are gone now, but still a lot remain. And the county fairs and the Illinois, the county fairs in Illinois are still pretty strong, and a lot of them, because they're obviously agriculture is so popular here in our state and is a big part of our state's economy. Well, then those county fairs exist, and there's a lot to driving them, but we used to have racers, motorcycle racers, would come and hang out at the shop. There was a group of guys from K&N Yamaha in Tulsa, Oklahoma that came up, and they'd stay at the shop there and stay in Thomasboro there with us. And, that K&N that later became the K&N that made air cleaners and stuff.
Oh,
but
wow.
At that time, they ran a Yamaha shop in Tulsa. And they would come and they would race Wednesday night at Santa Fe in Chicago, and they'd race Thursday night at our little track there in Champaign. They'd race Friday night over in Granite City, or Tri-City Speedway or something. Then they'd race Saturday and Sunday wherever the one-off races were, not a weekly program. But watching those guys race like that, and they'd come they bring all of their motorcycles, and I'm not sure you could have gotten any more equipment inside a Dodge Maxi van than what those guys had, back in the day. They'd bring their short track motorcycles, their big bore motorcycles for the big tracks, and all the parts. And I remember the last thing they loaded was an automotive creeper that they had to literally throw in the door and close it, because when you open the door, it's like in the cartoons when all the stuff comes out of the closet when Fred Flintstone opens the closet or something, And so I got used to watching those guys wanting to race and race and race and race and race hard. And that's what we wanted to do when we started. We wanted to race every night if there was a race, and so we started with Rev and doing a lot of Rev Proc now and some of his stuff. Doing a lot of county fairs. That's where we started, and it was not uncommon. I remember one month of July we raced 27 days in the month of July, back with the old Big Boss and stuff. Yeah. So we kind of learned that okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to have to learn how to work and work hard to keep it going. When we didn't have the good fortune of having a lot of money to race with. So the only way we could improve our operation was to try to get more money to throw back into it. And that meant doing more shows, more events. Now I'm not sure that the economic model that we were using at the time probably didn't make the most sense. But it was what we knew. It was the only way we knew how to make money was do more shows.
Yeah.
And we wanted to buy a new set of tires, or we wanted to buy a different manifold or a different set of shocks, or whatever the case may be. Well, the only way to do that was we're going to have to do more shows and try to figure out a way to do it. And then what limited marketing capabilities we had, and able to try to talk to somebody. And I remember Mark telling me time and time again, nobody's ever going to pay us to race monster trucks. But we finally were able to conquer that. So I don't know if I answered your question, but
no, certainly. And I think about, you and I both deal with a lot of, corporations in our respective lives now, as we basically always have. And you hear, abbreviations and phrases and stuff thrown around. It sounds like government jargon, ROI and DOI and KPIs. And it's like, if I went back to 1990 when you guys are slogging it out with Heavy Metal or Big Boss, and I'm trying to ask you, Tim, what are some of the KPIs that you're seeing, on the some bitchin' rods are out of it, and I got to go to the junkyard and find an old Lincoln with a 460. That's what my KPI is right now. So you guys, you were slogging it out back then. And so you have your monster tank, of course, first, Heavy Metal, and gain some sponsorship from Kyosho, the RC car brand, because of course they had some corporate offices with some other hobby companies right there in Champaign, Illinois. And then that took you to the Big Boss. But then certainly I think you guys really put yourselves on the map with Executioner, kind of your first real homegrown identity, right? Because Big Boss and Heavy Metal were kind of tied in with RC products first, right?
Yeah, well, Big Boss was Heavy Metal. We had come up with it, and then they made a model of that one.
Got it.
When we built the rubber tire truck, the Big Boss truck, it was kind of backwards everybody else of the era. The real truck existed, and then here comes the RC truck or the toys or the whatever along behind it. Well, in this case, the model already existed, and we built the real one. So that was a little bit different. And then, when Executioner came along, we had been in the sport enough to where we had, we began to learn, okay. And that was a time when technology in monster trucks was moving pretty fast. There was quite a few changes. First come along the lighter weight frameworks and stuff like that. And then we get to the better suspensions and, start designing suspensions that actually worked, even leaf springs that actually worked instead of just, big, massive dump truck springs or semi springs or whatever. And we started to make things better and better and better. And so things were moving fast, and we built that truck, and then those coilover shocks. And, then we had to start learning about, okay, now you're actually going to start going fast. So,
right.
So you got to be able to handle this thing, and it has to handle good. Where before you just had to, kind of aim down the track and sort of keep her between the lines, But now that finish line's coming up a lot faster, and the jumps are bigger, and you're in the air a little bit more, and things are different. So quickly learn that how to improve things, and always with wanting to race the better guys. I mean, we've had a fantastic relationship with BIGFOOT, and with all of those various team BIGFOOT guys over the years that I'm proud to call our friends. They taught us a lot racing against guys like that, and other guys too that we raced against. The competition where we were massively outmatched, but we learned. That was the thing. We were learning, how to race against these guys, trying to learn with our brains, because we couldn't race with our wallets. There was obviously no way we were going to outspend them, but we had to think of a way to try to, we got to make our stuff work as good as we can with what we got, because, we just have to try to, we have to try to stay up with them and not embarrass ourselves or whatever, and get run right out of the arena. So I was proud that we were able to do that. And then when we were fortunate enough to get a little money, well, then we went on a pretty good run of titles and championships, and the rest kind of is history. But it was neat to be able to to learn along in those formative days of the sport.
Well, I think about your guys', obviously I didn't know you in the 90s, but I think about the attitude that I think you must have had back then. Because in your shoes coming into, you had your executioner truck that you finished up. And I, real quick, I'll touch on the Everett Jasmer and USA 1 branding that you ran through that connection with him here in a second. But I think there's a prevailing attitude among a lot of independent monster truck drivers that I've witnessed, firsthand over the years, especially considering I basically spent the bulk of my time either working for one or the other, corporately backed teams, is sort of a feel sorry for me type thing. And I'm not dogging on anybody, but they chose to look at boy, I'd be pretty good if I had the money those guys have, where I feel like you guys must have been in the trenches thinking, I want to go get that money those guys have, but to do it, I have to figure out how to get neck and neck with them somehow. I got to be in the picture next to Barefoot or Bigfoot. I got to be in the second or third round on trucks and tractor power. So Army's talking about me more than just a first round exit or something like that. So I think it's a credit to you guys that, it was more of a chin up mentality rather than a, go kick rocks type mentality. But, help us understand real quick, how did the deal with Everett Jasmer come together for you guys to actually run as USA 1 before you really rolled out as executioner? That's a pretty big leap from a rubber tired leaf spring truck in a tank to all of a sudden, wow, this was the 1988 champ. This is still a pretty powerful name, maybe in its twilight, as we can see now with hindsight. How'd that deal come together with Everett, but also, kind of how did it wind down so quickly?
Yeah, when we were working with Hobbyco, Everett was too. He also had a deal with them, and the Kyosho brand made a model of the USA 1 or RC model of the USA 1. And when we were getting our race truck together, again, this is an era where the sport is moving really, really fast. And Everett was in between. Okay, he didn't really know where to go here. He was a more hardcore racer in the sport of monster trucks you won't find than Everett.
Right.
Obviously he wanted to be as hardcore racer as there could be in this freestyle nonsense. Just he wasn't in his bag.
Right.
So he's trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do? Should I invest in a new truck? What should I do here? So while there was this little bit of downtime with him, and we were just coming along building a new race truck, and both having worked with Kyosho, they did the introduction and said, hey, you guys ought to work together here. These guys got a race truck. One of the limiting factors is they don't have, our motors, we had, five, I don't know what, however many horsepower we had. We didn't have, real racing engines. We just had big blocks of Chevrolets with an old blower or something on them that was probably worn out. And here Everett has really nice Goodyear tires. He's got a deal with Goodyear. He's got really nice motors that he's got from General Motors and big 572s and things that we could never afford. And so let's put his motor and get us some good tires and stuff like that and put on the one. Well, he never gave us tires. I poked him and he never wouldn't give me any of them tires. But nevertheless, he did loan us a motor, and we put that in there. And so we carried his name a little bit to keep him relevant and keep him out there while he was trying to figure out what it is that he wanted to do. And I'm proud to call him a very good friend to this day. Just talked to him the other night at the Hall of Fame. He's a good fella, and he's in a good position. He sold his equipment now, and he's messing around with hot rods and some other stuff that he likes to, that he wants to do. But anyway, we started that partnership, and it worked pretty good. But it was a little restrictive working for him, that we couldn't call a lot of the shots our own. And or the way we wanted to do it. So we kind of mutually agreed that, all right, well, we got you through this little lull here. You go do what you decide to do, and we're going to come up with our own identity so that we can book where we want to go and do what we want to do, because we needed to eat.
Right.
we needed to go to these promoters that maybe he didn't want us working for. And or he didn't want to do those types of shows or events, or But we really needed to book the truck. We had no other way to make a living. So that's kind of how it ended, and we went on about our separate ways. But we're like I say, today we're good friends even to this day.
He's a great fellow to talk on the phone with too. If he catches me with free time, that'll. I'm glad cell phone minutes aren't a thing in my life anymore. We'll put it that way. But Matt, you had a question you wanted to drop in there real quick.
Yeah, it was more a comment than a question. But as a kid growing up in the late '80s, early '90s, I distinctly remember. And you were talking about not having money. I'd be lucky to go to 2 shows a year, and not have the latest and greatest toys. I distinctly remember the first branded toy that I wanted was that Big Boss Andor USA 1 Kyosho truck, because it would show up in the 4-wheeler magazines, and I was like, oh man, I gotta have one of those. So the branding of that goes a long way, especially back then when you didn't have the internet and stuff. And I just remember thinking, oh man, that's the coolest. I gotta have one of those. And later on as an adult, I got one because they were too expensive as a kid, but still the branding of it.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah. The branding of it just stuck out so much as a kid. It was real cool back then.
So even
that's
at
pretty
this,
cool.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, even at this point in your guys' history, I'm going to make a dad joke pun here, as my 12-year-old would call it, but one of the hallmarks of your operation already at this point is a familiarity dealing with corporate entities and sponsors of some kind. So as the Penda series through special events kind of starts lighting off, through the early 90s, you guys become a part of that, but you're also working kind of concurrently with USA Motorsports as one of your primary, let's say customers, booking your truck. And that leads to, one of the most recognizable 3D monster truck bodies ever, but also one of perhaps the neatest or most off the beaten path sponsorship engagements we had seen at that time. And that is a beef jerky sponsorship on a monster truck. So I don't think a lot of fans realize that the Hall Brothers team was involved with Bulldozer almost from the ground up. So, kind of how did that work out for you and Mark? And was it very financially beneficial for you guys, or did it really just come with like guaranteed bookings, or how did that work?
Yeah, that's a neat. You're absolutely right. A lot of fans have no idea that what's now El Toro started as a deal for Alberto Sausage Company, and was a beef jerky truck. But you're right. We were working for USA back in the day, but USA Motorsports, which they were really family oriented. Really took good care of us. And we had built one truck, and we kind of wanted to build a second one. We were thinking, all right, what if we build a second truck? Can we? A lot of guys today fall into that trap. I'll build a second truck, and I'm going to make twice the money, and then they use up all their spare parts building that, and it doesn't work. But we thought, okay, let's do this. And they came along. USA came along. This was their deal. They said, we've got this deal with Alberto, and there were 4 brands, regional brands across the United States. There were Denver Dan's, Lowry's, the Alberto ones, and there was another one. I
Smokecraft, was that one of them?
Smokecraft, that was the other one. And so they depending on where we were at, we would have maybe a specific flag from a regional supermarket, a chain that was, maybe it's Price Chopper or Kroger or A&P or whatever it was, wherever it was that we were going in the country. And it was not uncommon to do appearances at grocery stores. We'd have the truck set up at a grocery store, and sometimes they had like a special deal. You buy a certain package of beef jerky, and you got a coupon or something for a discounted ticket or whatever it may be. But it was a neat deal, and they came to us, said, we're going to build this truck. First one was Smokecraft. We did the Smokecraft, the red Chevrolet body, and we did that and we teamed up. They also did a deal with Guy Wood. Yep. Guy ran certain parts of the country. We ran the other ones when USA had they had enough shows to warrant having 2 trucks, and so that's what we did. Well, after Smokecraft, that was a pretty good success. Alberto stepped up and they wanted to do one of these 3D trucks. Now, Dan Patrick did a lot of work with USA, had that the 3D American Gladiator deal, and so he had that. They were already, the handwriting was on the wall for the 3D trucks, and
Sure.
so they decided, well, let's build this truck, call it Bulldozer. There was like a guy, a mascot, if you will, that would run around in the stands. I think his name was T-Bone or something. He was some guy in a bull suit, with a bull hat and horns and stuff. And he'd run around and hand out beef jerky samples or something.
That's a great line on a resume. 95 to 97. I was T-Bone, the jerky thrower.
Yeah. So now we got Ramsey Ram coming back, so we're gonna start using him. But anyway, that truck became the what's now El Toro, right. And it just kept changing. I remember when we got the first one, Steve Wood from USA said, "Now don't wreck this thing. I had a friend of mine that paints Harley Davidsons paint this. There's 5,000 hairs on this thing. They're all hand painted. So don't tear this body up." That was where we came. That was where Bulldozer developed, and that was our first bigger exposure to these corporate displays and stuff like that. When it was Kyosho and Hobbyco. Hobbyco was kind of like the Jegs or the Summit, if you will, of the hobby industry. When they had a big place right there in Champaign, and Horizon was there as well, which would have, if one was the Summit, the other one was the Jegs. Mm-hmm. They were competing against. They're one company now. They've merged, but nevertheless, that was our, we kind of got that little bit more exposure to the corporate stuff. Woody said, "Hey, you got to switch to Chevrolet trucks. I got a Chevrolet deal here. I'm already running Bigfoot Ford, so if I need some more Chevrolets, if you guys run a Chevy body or a GMC, where you can change it back and forth, that would really help me with dealership appearances and things along that line." And so that's what we did, and that was how all this corporate stuff came about. And then then we ended up switching from Chevrolets to Dodges when we found that Dodge dealers were a little bit more appeared to be a little bit more open to doing dealership promotions. So we thought, okay, wait a minute, hey, we should switch to a Dodge. So we did that in '99.
So at that time, I mean, that was kind of a valley in Dodge's involvement in the sport, almost like, what we've seen over the last whatever decade and change in NASCAR, where they've not been present since, I think Keselowski won a title in a Dodge in 2012, and then they kind of pulled out of at least the Cup side. So, Fred Schaefer's deal had ended. He had sold, unrelated to Paul Schaefer, the Barefoot operation. And it was, there were still strong trucks at that point in time. They hadn't quite yet become maybe the shell of themselves, like they've been at times since then. So there was kind of a gap, where you guys could drop in as a Dodge, bodied monster truck and start to, still capture some of the attention, like you said, of Dodge dealers, but also promoters as well too, looking to make sure that, let's be honest, a field full of Fords or Chevys isn't as appealing to a crowd or a promoter as, a mixed field with some things that, capture some attention. And of course, if I'd said that to you in 1999, you said, "Yep, you're right." And then if I could have shown you what is on track now with, there's shows now with nothing with a pickup truck body on it, which is, kind of a bummer sometimes. So, but any case, so, the end of the 90s is tough, right? Of course, and I don't want to take you down that road necessarily, but I know, you guys lost your father and he was so important to you guys, and you hadn't quite yet got your Dodge deal. So as the industry's changing, Penda's gone, Pro MT is just kind of starting up. There's no corporate backing yet. So we're talking 99, 2000. Where are you and Mark's heads at that point? Are you saying this is still something that we want to keep doing? This is still, we've come this far. Why would we stop now? Or are you starting to question, is this really financially viable as the sport shifts more towards freestyle and things like that?
Yeah, there were those questions. And, we got to one of the last show that Dad got to go to was it was in the assembly hall, was then the assembly hall in Champaign, right in Champaign, and it was fitting because he had a hand in building that building. He worked as a sheet metal worker. He actually worked when they built the building. He was one of the guys there working on it. And that was in March of '99. We did a race there, and he got to go, and then we lost him in April. And but we did think about, all right, what are we going to do now? Well, everything pointed to he'd want us to continue to race. I mean, that's what we did, and he was really proud of what we were able to accomplish with the limited resources that we had. So there was really never a question of should we go on. If there was, it wasn't longer of more than just a few minutes, and it was like well, hell yes, we got to go on. Right. we got to keep going. So it's all we knew at that point. And we certainly wanted to prolong the real world. I don't want to have to get a real job here. So let's keep it rolling. So we did, and we stepped up the promotional end of things. It was not uncommon to get in the truck and start driving to some dealers and just hand out some stuff and say, hey, this is what we do. Have you ever considered having a monster truck come to? I'd go up to Chicago and drive around and see if I could find, some things to do. And I did that a little bit. And that's when I figured out that the Dodge dealers looked like they were maybe a little bit more receptive. And maybe some of it was because of the program that Fred had. And then maybe they had some success with having a barefoot there. And then, now that program's gone, and hey, we ought to look at booking that truck again. That when that was here, that was a pretty good. And so that there was a little bit of that. So in June of '99, we switched to Dodge, came back out. I think the first one was Springfield, Missouri Jamboree. And, we had the new Dodge body, and we came back out there with it, and we took off with the Dodge. And it's then around 2000, sometime in 2001, Mark, no manufacturer's going to ever pay us to race, and I thought, well, maybe not, but at least if we can align ourselves with something, we can still build this dealership program, and I can try to get my foot in the door somehow, some way. 2001, they called and said, hey, we're looking at getting back in the sport, and we want to look at some teams, specifically your team and some others, and see what you have to offer. And came to a race with us in Indianapolis, the Jamboree, dressed in incognito. Nobody knew who they were except for us. And it turned out that back to the motorcycle racing, the lady that they sent from Dodge Motorsports happened to have grown up in Flint, Michigan, and it just happens that her neighbors were motorcycle racers that we knew that became famous motorcycle racers, and very famous motorcycle racers, and had a lot of success in the AMA Flat Track Series. We all ran in the same circles, and then. So there was, this, well, yeah, their house backed up to our house. We grew up as kids. You're kidding me. Well, did you know this guy? Well, yeah, so pretty soon we found that we had a lot of common friends. And
of course you're at the Indy Mile too. Like, how ironic is that too? You're at one of the most iconic flat track motorcycle racing facilities left in the country too.
Yep.
That's amazing.
It just worked out.
That's the fall of 2001. And of course, Raminator debuts with Dodge backing, the new name, new body, everything.
In 2002.
Right. So your clock is ticking to get this deal done and try and pull this operation together. I mean, you've got a lot of things to switch over from an independent executioner operation to a fully corporate backed Raminator operation. Tell me a little, that's got to be exciting, of course, right? But how stressful was that? How stressful was that?
That few months went like, that was the slowest moving clock of my entire lifetime, I think. Well, first of all, I got to think that, Dad was up there somehow putting all these pieces together, putting these motorcycle racing friends that we all knew, and somehow this was all working together way more than just coincidence.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, it was coming together. Well, now you take these guys. Here's Tim and Mark. They never really had much, and but we can taste it. It's closer than ever. We had a meeting with Dodge. We had people there. We had their people were at the races. It's right there. And there's going to be a meeting Tuesday. They're going to decide what they're going to do and stuff. Okay. So Tuesday comes and it goes, and the phone doesn't. Did they have the meeting? Well, so and so couldn't make it, so they pushed the meeting back to next week. Oh no, you're kidding. So now it's next week. Did they have the meeting? Well, yeah, they did, but they haven't decided exactly what they're going to do, and and it went back and forth, and we didn't know, but I guess we did know that they were talking to a couple of other teams.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know who they were. Was none of our business, but they did talk to some other teams, and we subsequently learned who some of them were. But nevertheless, they tell you, hey, this is looking pretty good. Here's what I need you to do. Now, keep in mind, here's Tim and Mark with their old junk semi outside. That we that the heater doesn't work, or has multiple problems. But nevertheless, I want you to go look at some semis, because what you just said, if we do this, we're going to have to move really, really quickly. I want you to go look at some semis, but don't buy anything. This could fall apart. Okay. Be ready. Look for some guys. You're going to need some employees. You're going to need them fast, but don't hire anybody. You're going to need to get motors. You're going to need all this stuff quickly. Don't buy anything, but start figuring out what you're going to do. And then finally, it was about 10 o'clock in the morning one day, and they called and they said, congratulations, we want to offer you a contract.
Wow.
And the money was something that we had never, I didn't know checks that big existed. That they had them, but anyway,
if I can just real quick, let's be relative about it too. For monster trucks, certainly, but then you think about, you and I both kind of have a ballpark idea of what a cup operation gets, or what a top flight NH. I mean, those guys play in bigger leagues than monster trucks.
Yeah, way
normally
bigger.
Get to play in. So you guys compared to them are still going to have to work with this budget, but now you've got like a weight off your shoulders in some respects. Like finally, like I feel like running a race team has to be like parenting, right? You got to trade ground every day to decide, what am I going to put my bandwidth on? Maybe there's a little bit of an oil leak on the semi tractor's oil pan, but the monster truck's got a broken steering knuckle and we got to leave tomorrow. What am I going to work on? Well, I'm going to just keep dumping oil in the semi because I got to fix this monster truck. Now you're starting to see this little, light in the tunnel that isn't a train, thinking, man, we might just be able to have a little more bandwidth now with this support.
And that was it. Once they called, so I those semis that I looked at over in Indianapolis, I called the guy and said, I'll take two of them, get them ready, and I called my banker and I said, this is what we're going to do. We got this deal, and I got to spend a lot of money to buy all these parts and to get all this stuff going. And they said, that's fine. Just get it go. They went up to the bank. And they took me into a room that I didn't even know they had this room. It had big leather chairs, and there was a great big table. And, I didn't know they had places
Sparkling
like that.
Waters, sir?
Yeah, here. So we sit down, and there's people with notepads, and all right, what are you going to need? How are we going to do? And you're going to need corporate credit cards, and you're going to need, all these things that I hadn't even thought about. And, we they got us established, and just go write the checks. We'll cover them, and then we'll get all this figured out. And okay. And, we were off to the races, and, literally, and, made calls I called Brad Anderson.
Yep. I was just going to say,
I said, Brad, I called out there and I talked to his daughter, and she told me a few things about, what I needed to do about the motors and stuff. And she said, well, and I had a few questions, and she said, well, here, just let me get Brad on the phone. And I thought, I'm going to talk to Brad Anderson, and he gets on the phone and he starts talking to me like he's known me for 50 years. And he says, well, here's what we would do. Let's do this and this and this and this. And I said, okay, well, how many motors you need? And I said, well, I need 4 of them. And he said, all right, I'll get them going. And I said, all right, you want me to send you a deposit or what? How do you want? I'll get them. Let me get them built, and let me get the parts, and I'll ship you the parts, and I'll just get you a bill. And I thought, oh,
Whoa.
is that how it works? I didn't know that they wouldn't want some kind of. And then the machine shop that Kyle, our little local G&G machine here, I tell them what we're doing, and they, geez, we got to call the insurance company and up the insurance on the building because you're bringing these four Hemis in here. That's worth more than the damn building's worth, So, if they happen to burn down.
A Brad Anderson Hemi, so you make a call to Ontario, California, get these parts rolling. But for fans out there watching this that are not, gearheads like we all are, as it turns out, a Y block shaped Hemi is just a little bit wider than you guys had, like Pontiac Big Chief motors, I want to say, in Executioner, right? So if anyone ever spent some time around HBR 004, which was the first, if I'm not mistaken, Raminator chassis,
that's
the last Executioner one, there's an interesting factoid I'd like you to tell us about on the main frame rail of that truck, where the engine sits in it, that was different from every other chassis before or after because of the Hemi.
That was it. When we brought along that Elephant to drop in there, we had to cut the frame and widen it out so that the big Hemi block would fit inside there. And the heads, they call them fat heads for a reason. They're big, and to get it all to fit, it took up a lot of room. So chassis number 4 got cut up and made into that very first Raminator. And then subsequently, the design was changed along the way after that, to where it could incorporate the Hemi engine. And we're still, to this day, we're one of the few teams that does our own. We build our own chassis. We build our own engines. We do our own graphic stuff. There in the shop, the place makes the bodies for us, but we hang them ourselves. We take them a new truck, and they make the body. We do our own paint work. We do our own graphics. We try to do everything in-house. So I know a lot of guys buy a chassis, or they buy a motor, or both, or whatever. But we try to do everything in-house. Curtis and I build the motors. Mark and some of the other guys build the chassis. Primarily Mark. We do get our housings from Patrick, our axle housings. But I do all the wiring and all of that. So we build them all right in our house there. I've taught some of the guys to do shocks. I've taught some of the guys to do differentials. I taught Curtis to how we build the motors. He and I are building them. We freshen our own superchargers. We do it all in house. So we're one of the few teams that does that. I'm proud of that.
I think Mark Hall's reputation as a driver is very well known, but he's still underrated as a fabricator, and he should be better known and respected for the fabrication. Because when you hired me on now, so 2003, you're hiring a bunch of guys on. You bring in Jeremy Dishman, you brought myself and Adam Armbrust in as kind of summer help that first 2003 summer to try and flesh the team out. Dale Veneer, all those guys. And we saw, firsthand, Mark's welding up his own drive shafts, and he was still building your guys' housings at the time when you were using F106, factory housings and things like that. There was nothing that, he couldn't fabricate. I can't even imagine how good he is at it now versus what I saw back then. I'm older now than Mark was when you guys hired me in 2003, which is crazy to think about how young and talented he was in all those aspects. I'm here to tell you, being a dad now for 12 years and now 8 years with my youngest, it's totally changed how I view age and responsibility and maturity and things like that. And just to see what Mark, and of course yourself, but, highlight Mark for a minute here, all of the weight of Raminator going out and dominating it shows is on his shoulders, but then all of the weight of anything that comes out of a stick welder or a MIG welder or anything like that at the shop's on his shoulders too. I don't think enough can be said about Mark's talents in those departments.
Well, that's nice of you to say, and you're absolutely right. He he's welded every piece of everything we've had, from the mud racers on together, and that's a big part of it. Makes it work. So.
Well, as we're coming towards the end of your story here, one thing I wanted to kind of ping you on is through the 90s, you mentioned teams like Bigfoot and the Barefoot operation with Fred Schaefer and stuff like that. No doubt, you're learning a ton from those those companies, right? Not just teams, they're companies. They have employees, they have sponsors, they have rolling assets on the road and all that kind of stuff. You're learning, the performance side from them at the track. But I question how much were you able to really glean off of them from a business standpoint, because now 2002, 2003, 2004, you're having to pull together out of thin air almost the infrastructure it takes to not just be Hall Brothers Racing, but it's Hall Brothers and employees. You've got a lot going on back then. And obviously I had a little bit of insight into it, but just real quick, tell us how difficult was that for you guys to go from being your own thing with some helpers that come and go and that sort of thing, to now you're responsible for employees? That's a whole nother ballgame.
Yeah, it was. And once you get some people like that, well, first of all, they expect to be paid. They don't want to hear when it's payday, hey, I'm not going to be able to pay you. That you can't have that. So these people, I think it's critical that once we took that on, that we had to be able, all right, now this is it. We got to make sure these guys are giving us their chance here. So we gotta make sure that they're very well taken care of, and that's interesting that you bring this up, because you're right, and I did lean on good friends of ours as we built this. I remember Bob Chandler one time telling me, he said, it was a final round in Indianapolis or something, and I think it was maybe Mark and Jeremy or Mark and Matt or something were in the final. And he said, you're gonna get to where you hate watching your own stuff race, because he said the worst times I had was Gene and Andy racing against each other, and they push way harder than they did, when they were racing anybody else, because they were gonna, damned if you do, I'm gonna win this thing, and knowing that the guy in the other lane's got the same equipment. But there were times when along comes a whole bunch more with this responsibility. Work comp. You have to have all these different insurances. You have to have all this. So there were times when I'd call up Ann Trent and say at BigFoot and say, how do you guys do this? How do you do that? And she was very gracious and explained to me, well, this is what we did, or this is how we did it, or this is how you could do, and of course her being an attorney helped too, with watch what you're doing here, or doing this or doing that. And she kind of explained and things how they did it, which probably kept me from making a lot of the same mistakes that that maybe they made in the early days. Sure. And saved me some trouble. So for that, I'm grateful. And always pointed me in the right direction, never misled me or anything like that. So that helped me as we got established, because there really wasn't any other model. Right. There aren't a lot of monster truck teams that had a lot of employees. There were only a few. Yeah. Still to this day. And
yeah. Well, so we had Jim Kohler on as a guest last season, and I, was kind of, because certainly my opinion of things has evolved over time and gotten more informed, I like to think. And if I agreed with what I thought when I was 18 on everything, I'd worry at 40 that I hadn't evolved a lot, right? So
right.
I'm talking to Jim. I said, dude, I said I used to be frustrated with you just as a fan, even when I was working for Halls, because I'm like, you guys kick so much ass out on the track, but it just seemed like, maybe in the pits or whatever, things were a little more relaxed or whatever. And we're down here like, everything's got to be on point in our Hall Brothers pit. And, Jim kind of came out and he said, I just didn't, understand the world you guys were working in. He goes, now I got 4 trucks and I got a bunch of guys and multiple haulers. And he's like, I didn't appreciate even myself at the time how difficult that is to maintain and keep an operation like that, going on the rails. He paid you guys a great compliment, which was really cool.
Yeah.
And it's great to see, the success he has too. But, and I don't want to take up your whole afternoon. God knows I could, but I do want to touch a little on my specific time there with you guys, because I view it so differently now than I could at the time, right? I only had, coming from rural Wyoming, backwards kid, I had no context of what the real world was like or anything. I didn't understand what real world responsibilities were. All I knew was making sure that I was trying to do my job as best I could with you guys. But of course, I came with a background in the internet side and taking photos and things like that. And I think that was probably a misunderstood, component of the industry at the time, because it just wasn't that big. Where now you've got drivers literally taking in-cab videos with cell phones of themselves while they're doing stoppies and moonwalks and stuff. But I can't imagine how frustrating that had to be for you at the time, where half of me all of me needs to be a crew guy, but I can't resist this once in a lifetime opportunity to finally shoot a picture of Raminator at Bloomsburg or something like that. Looking back, do you see that there was any benefit to that stuff at the time, or was I, and feel free to criticize me, was I going down the wrong path trying to hold wrenches and cameras at the same time?
No, you're right. Let me back up for a second. You were talking about Jim Kohler, and here's another guy that does a lot of his own stuff. It does a lot of his bodies and his chassis and motors and all of those things, and deservedly just got inducted into the Hall of Fame. This weekend, which certainly he certainly deserves it. A fantastic. Good ambassador for the sport. He's good with the fans. He's a hell of a racer, and he does a really good job of manning that operation that he has, a massive operation that he has, while he's still trying to do other things as well. So hats off to him. You're right. The social media thing. We never thought, obviously, that it would take off like it has, and that's such an important component in today's. In all of motorsports today. Back in the day, it was just, who cares what they put on the internet, or I just ignore them, or, I don't care what some kid's saying about how this or that or whatever. But we didn't know that a lot of the things that you were doing there, and the videos and stuff that you were creating, and the stuff that you set to music, which was really, really cool, and way ahead of its time, that you were doing, was pretty cool. And now we look back at that, wishing we had documented more things. Vicky gets on me sometimes. Well, did you take pictures? Well, no, we didn't. And along the way, we got all these memories and all of these. You should have seen this. And well, why didn't you take pictures? Why didn't you? I don't know. We just didn't.
Right.
And now these guys, perhaps it's flipped 180 degrees the other way, because some of these Monster Jam kids, and I call them kids.
Yeah.
They can't walk 2 steps without having the damn phone in their hand, and they're on social media with something. Look at me. Look at what I just did. Look at this.
Yeah.
I did this. I did that. And with respect, some of the talents that some of them have are fantastic. But there's a lot they don't know about the monster truck world that that they never learned and never will learn. I'll just leave it at that. But the social media thing it's important. It's a very important component of racing today. There's the old, I'll put your name, give me a check and I'll put your name on my race car. That doesn't work anymore.
Great example of that. So, look at this old Ned Jarrett diecast I have here. It's not even corporately sponsored by Ford. It's Richmond Ford Motor Company. You could get a car dealership to spend enough money on your race car in the 60s to go do top level cup racing. Like you said, those Ned Jarrett wasn't taking selfies on the backstretch of Darlington back then.
Nope. But now, they want to know how many hand raisers did you get here? How many likes did you get on this, or how many? Let's put and in fact, it's not uncommon for us to even, hey, Ram will say, we got some influencers that we need to get into this event or something that we, is influencer. What the hell's an influencer?
Yeah.
Who is that? And we just got to learn all these things, and they want, there's followers, and there's, this guy's got 10 million followers or something. And so he's, okay. Well, and then you see how the importance of how all this stuff, it just blossoms out. And, you put something on the internet, and pretty soon it's all, on one of these social media things, and then it's all over the place. And it's important now. So I'd like to think we were way ahead of our time when you were doing that.
Well, I appreciate that, and it was not without its struggles too, because you're trying to balance. In the back of my mind, as a fan that's now been what I think is temporarily hired to work for a team, and obviously that lasted nearly 5 years. But I'm thinking I just got to document everything I can while I can, because I'm never going to get to do this again. You just don't think that you're going to be able to stick around. Somehow you're going to, real world's going to come calling in September or October, but. There's a couple more quick little things I did want to touch on with you, and I'm so excited to bring these things up to you. But so everybody out there can have an opinion on everybody else in the industry, and that's fine. And some people have, which we're allowed to use naughty words if we want to on this show, and I'm keeping it clean out of deference for potential corporate sponsors and liaisons and stuff that might be watching this. But I'm going to use the S word here real quick. There's people that have talked shit about you guys unfairly for decades because of the corporate sponsorship money, and they act like you guys didn't put the time in and then just got handed a bunch of money simply for having a Dodge body on your truck, which I'm not that my opinion matters anything, but those people can stuff it because they're wrong. But one piece of humanity that I want to share with everybody, and I've never shared this before, ever, and don't worry, it's not embarrassing, Tim. You guys still had such a down-to-earth, grounded human aspect to you, even after you had the Dodge. It's not like your head swelled up and all that big. So look, you kept me on, right? You tell me in the fall of 2003, well, we think we might actually like to keep you. Would you like to stay, or you want to go home to Wyoming? Of course, it's like, I'm not going home to Wyoming. I want to stay here. But I was, struggling getting by, right? Because my skill level certainly didn't merit, a high pay grade or anything like that. But also, as you guys know, when you're young, you don't have credit, right? Well, how do you get credit? Well, you got to get a loan. Well, sorry, son, we can't give you a loan because you don't have credit. So I'm like, how the hell do I get a truck? I need a truck. Everybody here drives a Dodge or a Jeep or a Chrysler. How do I get something? And so Dale Benier wanted to sell me his little 2-wheel drive white Dodge Ram pickup truck, and I wanted it so bad because I needed some wheels. And, I was doing the best I could to pay for my apartment and pay for the truck and all that kind of stuff. And I was struggling, and you recognized it. And I've kept this, Tim, since 2000. This was October 24th of 2004, so just damn near 20 years ago. And I'll cover up all the vital details. You wrote me a $500 check, and you said, I'm not giving you this money, but if you get in a bind and you really need it, I don't want anything to happen. You need it to pay your truck payment or something like that. My truck payment was $249 to the Bank of Rantoul back then. And you wrote me that check out of your personal account, not the Hall Brothers Racing account, because you cared enough to make sure that I stayed above water through our slower time of the year. I owe you a hell of a thank you again for that, Tim. And I hope you're okay with me sharing that story. But this has lived in every toolbox that I've ever owned, because that's where it belongs to me, is in the toolbox. You know what I mean?
Well, that's nice of you to share. And it's the operation doesn't move forward without people. You got to have people. You got to have your guys. And I've always tried to have my guys back. That's an important thing. And boy, that's nice of you to share that. And it means a lot, and brings back some memories. One time, I didn't read a lot of when somebody would write offensive things about us, and there were a lot. There were a lot of them. They're no good. They just got a pile of money, and somebody somewhere, and I don't know who I can't remember who it was. I don't remember. Maybe they're still around today, and maybe they'll hear this, and maybe they'll know it's them. I don't know. Somebody posted somewhere that Hall Brothers just shows up with ugly red trailers and a pile of money and dominates, but and it went on like that. And I just thought, boy, that really hurt. That really kind of was a stab that I didn't really think was necessary. And then I thought, well, they just don't know. They just don't know us. And as there's been so many hardcore Hall Brothers haters over the years, I should say. But there's been a hell of a lot more people that have had good things to say about us and good experiences and stuff with us. And so I like to focus on that and dwell on that. And some people, you know, the haters and stuff, you're just never going to change their minds. But when people like George Carpenter or Bob Chandler, people that were, you know, important to me in the industry, come to you and say congratulations on what you're doing and what you're, you know, it's a good thing you got this deal and you were, you know, this couldn't have happened to somebody better, and you'll know what to do, and you'll know the right things to do, and you run the most professional operation the sport has seen. That meant a lot to me, you know, and so bad mouthers be damned as far as I was concerned. I just thought, you know, there's haters everywhere, and they're going to be out there, but never did get to the point where, like Denny Hamlin's, why I just beat your favorite driver there. So
I can't hear Mark.
You know, we never got into any of that, or never got into any corporate warfare or anything along those lines. Somebody came to me one time at the Jamborees. I think Runty and Doug Nelke had like a Hemi emblem with a circle and a line through it on their tailgate or something. And somebody came to me, oh, what do you think of that? I said, I think it's funny. I think it's cool. I think that's neat, you know. And
remember we made a joke at dinner in Essex Junction one night, and it's not like we were being cocky or anything, but we'd had a good weekend. I think we cleaned up pretty good, and one of us just said at the table, like, couldn't see that sticker when we were out in front of them. You know what I mean? So that's good competition, though. Some of that
that's fun.
Organic competition doesn't always exist in the sport anymore. But Matt, you were wanting to jump in there real quick.
Yeah, I think one thing that sticks out is even what you seem to indicate as one of your most like heart-wrenching critiques. They still said that you dominated. So, you know, how much of a critique is it really?
Well, that's a good point.
How terrible you are that you cleaned house with everybody, you know?
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, and thanks for pointing that out. You know, and I'd also like to say, you know, another thing that, you know, when we lost Dan Runty here not so long ago, and one time we were at I can't even remember where we were at racing somewhere. You know, we raced against them so many times all over the country and Canada, and RBC came to me and he said, "Hey, how many times do you suppose them guys have raced?" It was Mark and Dan were in the final somewhere, and I said, "You know, I can't imagine. I wish we'd have counted. I wish we'd have done a better job of keeping track of the stats like somebody does for NASCAR, NHRA, or whatever." Right. Because they probably raced more against each other than any two guys in the history of the sport. You know, those two guys raced more against each other. And I thought, you know, that it was really sad when we lost him, and, you know, the circumstances and stuff that I just wanted to, you know, our thoughts go out and the stuff to his family. That was an intense rivalry over the years, but it was a friendly rivalry. It was a good rivalry. It was a respectful rivalry. We had nothing but respect for each other, for the teams, for Bigfoot, and the Bigfoot Raminator rivalry as it was. And when you left and went there, Mike Miller or some other guys that had worked for us left and went there, and vice versa. Some guys that were there have come to us. And you know, there's so much respect. Never was there a bad feel between the two teams. Never, ever. Despite however hard we ran against each other, it was always with respect. And you know, and I'm really proud of that. I don't care whatever haters they can write whatever they want, but I'm pretty proud of that. That we always came to the races. We did the best we could with what we had. Some days it just wasn't in the cards. Some days, you know, we couldn't do anything wrong, and luck just fell our way. And we've been very fortunate, and I wouldn't change a thing along the way. It was every heartache was worth it. Every ripple in the water was worth it. You know, everything we've done we've learned along the way, and have we done everything right? Nope. Far from it, but we did it our way, and we did it the best way we knew how, and I'm pretty proud of that.
Well, I have to say, as we start to kind of wrap up here with you, and I know we've taken up well more of your time probably than you
That's all
wanted
right.
us to, but
That's all
we're
right. That's fine.
incredibly grateful for it. But I have to share with you. So I only got to race against you guys, once in Springfield, Missouri, at the Jamboree there,
That's
and
right.
so obviously we're both, super competitive. It's a jamboree. It's also miserably goddamn hot that weekend too. So I don't think
Yeah.
anybody was necessarily in a great mood. Your guys' trucks were darkly colored and so was mine. So it's not like any of us were exactly happy sitting in our trucks. I told a funny story in another episode where I was pitted at. John Peterson's up in the truck trying to talk to me, and Diesel Dave's parked next to us idling. He's got the school bus over there idling, rest his soul, but I got Cummins fumes wafting through the cab.
Yeah,
And
there you go.
John's like, you've been doing this long enough. You don't need me up here. Besides, it stinks like fucking diesel. And he drops out of the floor. And I'm like, thanks, John boy. Like, damn it, just leave me up here choking. And then I got to race him the next round. I'm like, he's doing this on purpose to me, smoking me out. But no, I remember it vividly. I mean, I went 2 for 2 against you guys. Mark got me, 2 times. But what a pleasure it was racing against you guys, because you raised me. You brought me into the sport. You raised me. I carried, and I still do to this day. I mean, I've been with the company that I work for now. I've, coming up on 9-10 years with this company already. It's a family owned business. I've never worked for a business since Hall Brothers that wasn't family owned, which is kind of a fun tidbit.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I can't do it, right? Like, I have to be with a family business. I mean, I'm going to be working with my owner hand in hand tomorrow, just like I did with you guys back then. But you raised me.
That's cool.
You gave me an immense amount of work ethic and direction and self-starting mentality that I needed. It was it was the Paris Island boot camp of monster trucks, really, is what it was at the time. And I distinctly remember, not getting some wheels polished right on a trailer or something, and you came over and gave me some classic Tim Hall instruction on what I wasn't doing right. And I remember, kind of like, oh God, I didn't know it was that big a deal. And you're like, if you want to be the champs, you have to look like the champs first. So that's kind of always been my rebuttal to somebody that would say something about, oh, their equipment's so fancy and stuff. It's like, well, you have to look that way for a reason. When you have sponsors paying for that image, but also you've made that monetary investment, you got to take care of your equipment. So I took a lot of that mentality certainly with me to Bigfoot and every job after that. Bigfoot expected us to be on our own quite a lot. And so, as you know, Tim, you're out there by yourself for 70% of your schedule through the year, let's call it. You rely on all those previous things that you've been taught and you've learned to try and stay successful, take care of your stuff, make it through those shows, drive accordingly. So I have a huge thank you guys to that. And so for me, it was a very proud moment, actually, although I wouldn't have reflected on it at the time, because all I was trying to do was keep sweat out of my face and hope the Cracker Barrel would be open when we got done with the show. But I was so thankful that you guys had taught me all that. And it was so cool to, my first monster truck I ever drove over cars was a Raminator, but my first truck I ever raced, of course, was a Bigfoot truck. So for me, sort of tying all that stuff together was actually a pretty special thing that weekend. And it was just neat seeing you guys over there and knowing that, part of my bloodline runs through your guys' operation. But, as we wrap up here, I just want to say, thank you so much again for taking the time to, bench race with us a little bit today. But Matt and I are, very grateful to have you on. We'd love to have you on another time.
Absolutely.
If ever you wanted to, because we know there's so much more of your story that, we just won't be able to get to today. But as we wind it down, kind of, you gave us a little preview of what 2026 is going to bring for you guys. But, kind of tell us a little bit more, if you can, real quick, like how that year's shaping up for you and what you're most excited about heading into the new year.
Yeah, I think this, these NASCAR things are going to be really cool. A lot of, we're going to meet up with the colleague guys now. We're actually going to remember our old trailer 4 there, Kyle, that carried a Craftsman truck. We're going to be back to doing that now. We're going to be carrying a Craftsman truck, show truck. So that'll be neat again, to get to do those, and going to put together a little tour, a dealership tour, where dealers can book a Raminator or a Ramdemption truck and the Craftsman truck. And we're also going to continue with Hotsy. Hotsy continues. We'll be working with them into 2026. So that's going to be neat. It's cut back a little. That program's cut back a little bit because of the tariffs and some of the other stuff that they're dealing with, and some unknowns that they're dealing with. But so you won't see it quite as much on track. It's still going to be out there, and it's still going to be a bunch of events. But going to be a little bit different. So, but nevertheless, we'll be doing HOTC stuff, and so that's exciting, and looking forward to maybe some new markets, maybe some markets that we haven't been to. Some of these other promoters that we're going to be working for are working in markets that take us back to the old USA days, so that'll be kind of fun to go revisit some of those. Maybe we weren't at so many of the state-of-the-art latest NBA arenas, but we'll be back in someone that maybe we raced it years ago, or at least some markets that we raced it years ago. And it'll be good to see old friends and fans in those in those markets and looking forward to that. So gonna kind of be a little bit of a maybe a reboot. It's going to be fun.
There's truck buyers at those shows too,
Absolutely, that's right.
There you go.
Maybe more.
Well, awesome, Tim. I like I said, I can't thank you enough. There's so much more we could talk to you about all night long, but we're going to let you get back to your Sunday afternoon and enjoying the rest of your weekend, and then excited to hear that you're getting back in the shop and you guys are getting everything ready for next year, and then hope to see you out there, whether it's one of the cup races we go to next year or catch you at a show in a new market we haven't seen you in ever before or in a long time. I know we got to see you in Denver a couple years ago, which was nice. And
yeah, that was cool.
You got to meet my boss that I work for now, which how weird is that? Introducing, my first real boss to my current boss 22 years apart. It's pretty funny, but no, we appreciate you guys. Appreciate your time this afternoon. And we're going to sign off for Bottom Dead Center, season 2. Good gosh, what are we at? Episode 6 now in season 2 here with Tim Hall. So thanks to everybody out there for tuning in. Make sure you check us out, our Instagram page at OSMT_1975. And of course, here on YouTube, OSMT 1975, and our online merch store where you can buy the absolute worst, crappiest monster truck merchandise known to man at osmt.myspreadshop.com. Thanks for checking us out. We'll be back to you here in another couple weeks with another episode of Bottom Dead Center. On behalf of Matt Looker and our special guest, Tim Hall, thanks a bunch. We'll see you on down the road.
Thank you, guys.